I would encourage you, for those of you new to the Zoom platform, to if you look down at the bottom of your control panel, there's a little box with 2 chat bubbles called Q&A. If you have any questions, if you'd like to engage with the presenters, we'll be taking questions at the end. But if you have any technical difficulties or you need any assistance, please do type into the Q&A box, and we will we'll have the opportunity to engage with you. So we're going to get started in just a few minutes. My name, as I said, I'm Michael Jans. I'm the Director of Communications with the Canadian Mentoring Partnership, and I'm helping host today. So if you have any challenges or questions, feel free just to message me in the chat. So we're going to have a number of speakers today sharing some exciting stories. If for whatever reason you get disconnected today, we're going to be recording the video and the audio of today's presentation, and we'll be sharing it with you via our YouTube channel and through our other mediums. So as I said, please feel free to engage in the chat box, ask us questions. Unfortunately for today, this webinar will only be in English. However, we're actively exploring simultaneously having English and French translation for future webinars. We're producing as fast as we can more French language content. So this is a key priority for us, so we're sorry for today, and we look forward to having this in future. So we're going to also be showing a couple of videos today. So in the event that there are challenges with them, we'll be emailing them out, and they're on YouTube. We ask you to share them with your community and help spread the word. So as for all of us, these are challenging times. We're all learning together. I don't think our internet has ever seen this much demand before. So for whatever reason, if we have a bit of lag, just bear with us. We thank you for your patience in advance. So at this time.
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. Is my mic open?
Yeah, thanks.
Perfect, parfait. Je voulais juste prendre une minute d'accueillir tout le monde en français. Si vous comprenez un petit peu d'anglais, Michael vient juste d'expliquer qu'aujourd'hui, notre webinaire va poursuivre en anglais pour la simple raison qu'on n'a pas eu la chance de vraiment tester des plateformes pour être capable de faire une traduction en même temps que vous écoutez la présentation. Et on ne voulait pas avoir une présentation aujourd'hui anglais-français, anglais-français. Alors, on s'excuse. Par contre, l'enregistrement d'aujourd'hui, les diapos vont tout être traduits et l'enregistrement du vidéo va être traduit aussi. Alors, la semaine prochaine, on devrait avoir en ligne la présentation d'aujourd'hui bilingue disponible pour vous. Nous allons aussi essayer de montrer quelques vidéos aujourd'hui. Si jamais, avec la technologie ces temps-ci, l'Internet, il y a beaucoup de demandes. Si jamais les vidéos ne marchent pas, on va vous partager les liens par courriel suite à la rencontre aujourd'hui. Je veux aussi m'excuser pour les vidéos qui ne sont pas présentement 100% traduites. Vous allez voir, il y en a qui ont des sous-titres, il y en a qui ont, quand vous commencez le vidéo, c'est tout en anglais. On travaille sur ça aussi et la semaine prochaine, ça va être disponible dans les 2 langues. Et surtout, on vous remercie d'être là avec nous et de votre patience pendant qu'on adapte à la nouvelle réalité virtuelle. Merci.
So for today, we're going to have a welcome from our tri-chairs who are able to join us on video. We're going to be sharing an overview of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership Initiative, and we're going to be giving you a highlight of our 4 pillars and priority areas. We'll be talking at the end about ways that we want you to engage with the broader mentoring community, how we can connect after this webinar and other opportunities forthcoming. We're going to be hosting a number of important conversations over the next few months, and so please stay tuned. We'll be sending out as well the registration information on how to get involved with that after the webinar. So we're just going to jump over to a video we'd like to share with you at the moment about the partnership. So stay tuned for a minute. And again, thank you to all of you who are sharing your comments in the chat box. Great to see it's working and we can have some digital engagement. And so in just a few minutes, we'll be right back.
The Canadian Mentoring Partnership is started by 3 organizations that came together and decided that we need to build a mentoring movement in Canada. Really hearing from other mentoring stakeholders what it is that we need to be doing and where we need to be focused our energies.
The Canadian Mentoring Partnership really came out of some conversations that we were having with Alberta Mentoring Partnership, with Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Canada. We gathered some people to have a summit to say, do we need a Canadian Mentoring Partnership? And it was a resounding, we need something nationally to really think about how do we strengthen mentoring and increase the number of youth who have mentors.
And so the whole idea of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership is up the capacity, get knowledge across to all mentoring organizations, and make sure that young Canadians have access to good people that can be there for them.
A pan-Canadian mentoring strategy will help organizations raise an abundance mindset of mentorship and call for community members to think about their role and the role that they want to play in the life of a young person to be able to help guide and shape and support them on their journey.
One person alone can't ensure that all young people in the country have access to life-changing mentoring relationships. There's that saying that it takes a village to raise a child, and I believe this approach is really putting that saying into practice.
We know there's a lot of research out there about when kids are connected, when they have a developmentally healthy relationship in their life, they have higher senses of belonging, higher self-esteem, greater mental health, greater high school completion. So I want the higher protective factors and less risk factors in their life. So what does it mean to youth? It means that they have the ability to be all that they can be.
The impact of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership on the movement of mentorship in Canada is still to be identified. We are working very closely with our partners across the country, but not only our current partners, but to bring more people to the table.
We are building the movement. The idea was we didn't want to come in with the answers, and we didn't want to be prescribing how mentoring should look in Canada, because we are collaborating together to design, what is it we need to be looking at, and then creating the plan for the future.
We have a responsibility to make sure that young people have mentors in their lives. And in order to do that, we have to engage nationally, provincially, and locally, and find ways to get people interested in being a mentor and then help youth know where to find those mentors.
I think success for the Canadian Mentoring Partnership is really about engaging Canadians. And if we can collectively think about young people as a priority, and if we could think about our young people as they're going to be the people who shape this country, who lead this country forward, and that we can stand with them and beside them to help them become the leaders of tomorrow, then we'll have been successful in our mission of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership.
From our tri chairs. So I invite our tri chairs to unmute their mics and to bring greetings.
We can't hear you, Matthew.
Matthew, I think you're...
There we go.
There we go. Awesome.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. For some, this may be good morning for those out west, but great to have you here. Of course, this is not exactly the format or the forum that we had envisioned for the symposium, but a big prop to the Canadian Mentoring Partnership team for pulling this together so quickly. It was just a couple of weeks ago that the determination was made that we would not be able to hold the place-based event and shifting to the virtual setting. With COVID-19 taking over so many aspects of both our professional as well as our personal lives. This is a great opportunity and something that I've very much been looking forward to coming together and with 143 participants, sharing some of what the work has been done to date and what this could look like moving into the future. This is a new and adapting normal for all of us and for the time being. And my hope, and I think the hope from the other tri-chairs and the CMP team, is to communicate to service providers, practitioners, researchers in the mentoring space that there's a community to building and supporting the work that you're doing on the ground, and looking for ways that we continue to grow that movement of mentorship in Canada. Because we want to fight the social isolation with these forms of digital nearing, and the CMP team has certainly been doing a wonderful job in doing that, and will continue our efforts to engage in this way. So with that, it was just a big welcome and a thank you and an apology that we can't be together in person, but so looking forward to the journey ahead, and we'll look forward to face-to-face opportunities in the future. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Matthew. My name is Beth Malcolm, and I'm the co-chair of the Ontario Mentoring Coalition, as well as the tri-chair of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership. And I'm really excited to be here with you, although it would have been nice to be together in person. But we're excited to be here on behalf of the Ontario Mentoring Coalition too, because we know that there are benefits from a collective impact approach, and we know that there can be benefits in provinces and local communities. And in the work that I do at the Canadian Women's Foundation, I've also seen firsthand the impact that collective work can have on subsectors within provinces and nationally. And for us, it was focusing on mentoring with girls. So we know that mentoring transcends any one organization or any one program or any one province. And this is where the collective work or the collective efforts through Canadian Mentoring Partnership can really play a role in making a difference for youth across the country. We know that there are 4.1 million youth in Canada between the ages of 10 to 19, but we also know that of those youth, many thousands are children who are waiting for an adult or a teen to play a role in their lives and to believe in them. And then we know that the waiting lists are going to continue to grow, and in our new normal that we're experiencing right now, it's an opportunity for us to think differently and think more broadly about mentoring, and keeping in mind, of course, the positive impact that mentoring can have. And it was this growing need for mentoring, and through that Bank of Montreal Financial Group and the Government of Canada's Youth Employment and Skills Strategy saw the wisdom in investing in some kind of collective impact approach to addressing mentoring across the country. So that's really where Canadian Mentoring Partnership came from, knowing and recognizing that we need to do something more for the youth across the country. So together, we can build a coalition, we can build mentoring partnerships, we can generate knowledge through national dialogue, and we look to all of you to be part of that. And we appreciate you being here today, but we also appreciate the commitment that you will consider making going forward, and sharing your wisdom and expertise on behalf of Canadian youth. So thank you very much, and I'm going to pass it over to Liz.
Thanks. I appreciate being. Thanks, Beth, and thanks, Matthew, for those kind comments, and thanks to the team for putting this together today. This is our first Canadian Mentoring Partnership national meeting, and so many of us get to be part of it in these new ways, but we are part of it. I've had the privilege of co-chairing the Alberta Mentoring Partnership for the past number of years with Marnie Pierce from Alberta Education and Rochelle Tong from Alberta Children's Services. And I can tell you firsthand that work has made a real difference in the lives of children in our province. We're really honored to join with the Ontario Mentoring Coalition and Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada to try to create this new movement of those of us who care deeply about the children in our community. And that we want to be able to walk alongside of our kids and make sure that they have the support and have champions in their lives. And that's really what this is all about. How do we mobilize more Canadians to be there for kids in the country? How do we pull together the resources that are needed to do this work? In Alberta, we work with 170 not-for-profit organizations across the province. Some where mentoring is part of their continuum of work, and some where mentoring is their core work. The difference those volunteers make in kids' lives has been demonstrated year after year after year in research. And with the Government of Canada and BMO putting up funds in order to create the Canadian Mentoring Partnership, we get to be able to mirror some of the work that's been done in other provinces and other countries. And as importantly, we all get today to be part of a new movement. And so we are so pleased that so many people have been able to participate this way, and that so many people care deeply about the kids in our country. Today's the beginning of you helping to shape what CMP will look like going forth. You get to help do that co-creation, that design, so that collectively we can create something that we will all be very proud of. I think it's really important in even these challenging times that people know that they can reach out to champions in their lives, that people that will walk beside them, people that are there for them. And maybe this situation we now find ourselves in has taught us even more how much we need each other. And so thank you again for joining. Thank you for making today possible. And thank you for helping to build this new movement of Canadians.
Thank you very, very much for being with us and for sharing your remarks. So we're going to turn over to Stacey Dakin, our Managing Director. Stacey, if you want to unmute your mic and please share.
Great. Thank you, Michael and Beth and Liz and Matthew. And thank you everyone on the line who was supposed to either be with us in Ottawa or who are benefiting from the new format and being able to join us virtually today. When we decided to cancel the in-person symposium, we had over 150 people scheduled to join us, either as conference delegates, speakers, or staff. For our mentoring day on the Hill, we had already confirmed 27 meetings with ministers, deputy ministers, MPs, and their staff, and we had over 80 delegates who had raised their hand to either attend those meetings, question period, or to participate in some sort of government relations training. As you can imagine, we were truly disappointed when we had to make the decision on March 9th to cancel, and at the time felt that it was the right decision. Only 2 days later did the World Health Organization declare COVID-19 as a global pandemic. Excuse me. Over the last couple of weeks, the CMP team, like all of you, is adapting to the reality, the new reality which changes daily and sometimes hourly. We are choosing to focus our time on how we can offer solutions during this time of physical distancing and virtual engagement. Now more than ever, relationships and being social is key to getting through this together. All things considered, I am genuinely thrilled to be here with you today to celebrate the power of mentoring and continuing to build the mentoring movement in Canada. Let's take a minute to reflect on our journey the past 20 years. Do I have the power to move it? I guess so, eh?
You do. So if you go up to the top, there's a remote control, and you can just say request control of the mouse.
Request control. Thank you. We are learning how to do all of this stuff live on the spot. Perfect. So how did we get here? Well, back in 2000, a national roundtable on mentoring was held in Toronto, where research was presented that confirmed that mentoring was an effective approach to reducing risk and vulnerability in youth. The research concluded that although mentoring is not exclusively the role of government, the nonprofit sector and government can form an effective alliance to address youth at risk through mentoring. That same year, the Mentoring Canada online portal was developed with funding from the Moutart Foundation. Its primary focus was to promote and support mentoring initiatives in communities across Canada by providing up-to-date relevant resources for mentoring and other service delivery organizations through an online library of downloadable materials and interactive training modules. In 2001, results of a survey conducted in Alberta supported the idea of forming a province-wide mentoring initiative. And at the time, Big Brothers Canada, Big Sisters Canada, and Big Sisters Ontario merged to form Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada. That is a tongue twister kind of line. Around 2005, the Mentoring Canada portal no longer had a dedicated employee to update and maintain it. Slowly, it integrated into the internal-facing Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada resource library. In 2008, the Alberta Mentoring Partnership was established. And in 2013, the first National Mentoring Symposium held in Banff brought people together to celebrate 100 years of mentoring across Canada by showcasing innovative mentoring partnerships, practices, programs, and research, and by setting the stage for mentoring in the future. In 2014, the Ontario Mentoring Coalition was established, and Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada launched its Vision 2020 strategic plan that outlined how they would lead a dialogue with other mentoring organizations on the desirability of creating a common voice for mentoring under the umbrella of Mentoring Canada. In 2016, the first National Mentoring Leadership Summit was held, the day before the second National Mentoring Symposium was held. During the Leadership Summit, it was agreed that a Pan-Canadian mentoring leadership team would be formed and led by Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada with support from Ontario Mentoring Coalition and Alberta Mentoring Partnership. It is also around the same time that the Mentoring Canada portal was turned off as it was no longer being supported. Before I move to the next slide, Michael, can we pull up the first poll?
Okay, just 1 sec.
Great. So I would like to know a little bit more about the people on the line. Can you let us know if you were a part, and it says 2014, my apologies, that's a typo. Were you a part of the mentoring movement between 2000 and 2016? So up until that first Leadership Summit and that second National Mentoring Leadership Summit. We'll just give you a second to answer. The idea, and if you were involved with mentoring before 2000, by all means, please let us know. It's a simple yes, no, or oh, I don't know. It's all a blur. Do we have any preliminary results, Michael?
We sure do. So
we have, go ahead.
About 60-40. So a lot of new folks involved. That's really exciting.
That's exciting, but it does also highlight for everybody on the phone that this mentoring movement has been building momentum for many years, decades. And so we do have a lot of veterans around who can help us, but we also have a lot of new energy to be able to bring us forward. Could we go to the next slide? I do want to thank that 38% for being the early investors in the mentoring movement, and I collectively thank you all for getting the ball rolling. We move into 2017, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada focused its efforts, and if you'll recall earlier, I mentioned that they were kind of given the flame to carry the movement forward. So Big Brothers Big Sisters, on behalf of the leadership team, focused on finding funding for the Pan-Canadian Mentoring Strategy. In 2017, Big Brothers Big Sisters chose to focus their own pre-budget submission to the Government of Canada's Finance Committee on the Pan-Canadian Mentoring Movement by requesting that $20 million be invested in mentoring over the next 3 years. In 2018, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada negotiated an agreement with Bank of Montreal Financial Group to fund the State of Mentoring Research Project. The agreement was for $750,000 over 5 years. In the fall of 2018, the Pan-Canadian Mentoring Leadership Team traveled, and the Pan-Canadian Leadership Team we are now calling founding partners, just so that there is a tie to the new terminology. But back in 2018, we were called the Pan-Canadian Mentoring Leadership Team. We traveled to Boston, where we met with Mentor and the Center for Evidence-Based Mentoring. The goals for these meetings were to learn how they built Mentor and the Center. And at the end of 2018, the leadership team embarked on a blueprinting process to clarify the vision and future of mentoring movement in Canada. And a lot of you on the phone today were engaged in that in January 2019 when we held some focus groups. In 2019, following the blueprint process, we agreed and settled on the name the Canadian Mentoring Partnership. And after months of drafting, revising, discussing, and planning for our concept paper, Big Brothers Big Sisters entered on behalf of the Canadian Mentoring Partnership Leadership Team a contribution agreement with the Government of Canada through the Youth Employment and Skills Strategy. That agreement was for $6.3 million over 3 years. This catalyst funding has allowed for the Canadian Mentoring Partnership to be formally established, for us to hire dedicated staff, and to continue building the mentoring movement through collective impact. I don't know about you, but I think we've done a heck of a lot of work in the last 20 years, and there's a lot more that was done and that is not on this screen. I want to pause for a moment just to acknowledge that there are many other mentoring success stories not captured in the timeline, and that I recognize we have focused a lot on Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada, Ontario Mentoring Coalition, and on Alberta Mentoring Partnership. And I'd like to take a moment, we can bring up the other poll, just to get a sense of those in other territories and provinces around Canada that have been involved in mentoring up until now. Where are you from, and how have you been engaged in the mentoring movement in your community? Actually, I asked the question how you've been involved. There's no way for you to answer how you've been involved. Just raise your hand and let us know if you've been involved in your territory or province.
We are watching the chat box, so feel free to type in your responses there.
We'll give another second. You let me know when you have some results.
So about half of the respondents have, or half of participants have responded to the poll. So we see a bit of a spectrum across Canada here.
I don't see it on my screen. Is it popping up for you?
So at least every region, at least every province had at least one person who responded.
Okay, so great.
Attendees should see the poll results. And again, if you want to talk more about the how, please type it into the chat box.
Great. So we can move on to the next slide. I just really wanted to demonstrate that it's not just the 3 organizations that we've been talking a lot about today so far that are involved in growing the movement. Every one of you on the phone, whether you are a dedicated organization to mentoring, or you're a service provider, or you're a stakeholder who's investing in mentoring and investing both financially and your time as a volunteer, it is taking place across the country, and we're just really trying to convene in a common place together. Can you go, do I have to go to the next slide? I don't think I have control. Thank you. So we mentioned before that the Canadian Mentoring Partnership is really living into the idea of a collective impact initiative. Now that we have some dedicated funding, we have a bunch of people ready and willing to help build the movement, but how are we planning to move forward? And how does this impact you? The founding partners of CMP decided long ago that they would not and could not build something in hope that people would engage. Instead, they agreed that a collective impact approach was the best way to grow the mentoring movement in Canada. Together with you, we commit to building a common understanding of the problem and a shared vision for change, collecting data and measuring results while focusing on performance management and shared accountability, coordinating efforts through a joint plan of action, continuous and transparent communication, and ensuring that the CMP team, so our staff folks that you're going to meet today, convenes and coordinates participating organizations, allowing CMP to become a true backbone structure for the mentoring movement in Canada. Could you go to the next one, please? When we think of collective impact structures, we've leaned a lot on the Tamarack Institute's examples of what structures and what the five common features are. So this is one we've pulled from one of their tools and resources. And if you think of how collective impact initiatives are set up, they often reflect this type of structure. So conveners provide organizational leadership and have the credibility to convene the partners. Fiscal sponsors hold fiduciary responsibility for projects, including such things as hosting and supervising staff. And I'll acknowledge here, fiscal sponsors is not always a term that are boards of directors or our lawyers or the Canada Revenue Agency likes to hear, but in the case of collective impact, it is a commonly used term to describe the organizations that are hosting collective impact structures. The backbone structure provides leadership for staff and servant leadership to collaborative tables. The leadership table, so there's also committees. The leadership table is formed of multi-sector partners with spheres of influence commit their organizations to the change outcomes. So it's not necessarily about the person that's around the table, although the person is important. It also is about which organizations are around the table. Then we have steering committees, also known as executive committees, and they are a smaller subset of the leadership table and represent also the communities of practice or the working groups. Working groups or communities of practice are composed of members of leadership table and external community who drive forward subsets of the collective effort. Next slide, please. I'm not even going to try to move them at this point. Thank you, Michael. So CMP is a collaborative impact structure. If you take a look here, we have, we do consider the conveners of the CMP to be the founding partners. Fiscal sponsor at this time for both projects is Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada, the backbone structure being the Canadian Mentoring Partnership. Committees, we need to create the leadership table. So we are having a webinar on May 6th where we really want to discuss and dig deep into what this leadership table could be and what it'll look like, as well as the steering committee. We are using a tri-chair format for the moment. This works well for the founding partners, but as we move to expand and include more people, what would that steering committee look like? The last piece of the puzzle are the working groups or communities of practice. And the reason we use working groups and communities of practice is that communities of practice are sometimes longer term initiatives that really allow for conversation and dialogue. Whereas right now we are, especially if we look at a topic like virtual mentoring, we're more in a working group setting where we have to dig deep and move to action on some topics. So we will be looking at which format and which way is the best way for us to move forward around a given topic. Next slide, please. So the CMP has committed to expanding access for mentoring for youth in Canada by building sector capacity to empower every young person to fulfill their potential. It is important to recognize that the CMP initiative is where we want to engage with all of you. You form the top half of this screen. Although we are very fortunate to have funding from Bank of Montreal Financial Group and the ESDC, CMP is developing a sustainability plan that will allow us to continue building the movement beyond 2020. As we do this, we are keeping in mind two key points, and there might be more, but for the moment, we're just holding on to two. CMP cannot become a competitor to mentoring service delivery organizations, and we cannot take away funds from communities. We also need to ensure we develop pipelines of support for grassroots mentoring coalitions who are struggling to get off the ground due to lack of human and financial resources. So those are two pieces we're keeping in mind when we talk about sustainability for CMP. We recognize the hard work that is happening on the ground every day, and we want to be a value added. We do not want to become just another newsletter that you sign up for. To better demonstrate how collectively we can have a direct impact on our mentors and our mentors, we have pulled together a short video for you. So we're ready to go to the video, Michael, please. The video was inspired by our developmental evaluation framework. We are working with Mark Cabage from Here to There Consulting to evaluate our project and the impact that we're having. And this is a short video, our first one, that we hope will help to animate that.
Gurpal and Jean were introduced to each other just over 4 months ago by Amanda, who runs the mentoring program at the local youth center. Jean was very happy to connect with Gurpal because he was born a boy but doesn't feel like or act like other boys. Jean has a lot of questions about gender identity. Gurpal has built a strong connection with his mentee and wants to help Jean figure things out. After their last activity, Gurpal decides to reach out to Amanda for guidance and help. With only one phone call, Amanda is able to offer Gurpal the support he needs. But how was she able to provide support for him so quickly? Part of Amanda's training when she started at the Youth Center was an introduction to tools and resources available for mentoring service providers, both online and through her network of mentoring professionals. What Gurpal and Jean do not know is that across Canada and around the world, there are hundreds of people working together to improve, redesign, and scale successful mentoring programs and service models. They will support youth at any stage of their life. How are they doing this? They build professional peer relationships, provide feedback, and reflect on what they see in practice. They learn to use tools and resources that can better support young people. They also connect with each other, seize opportunities to learn and grow, and work as a unit. This leads to a collective impact on policies, a shift in the system and the community, brings flexibility to the norms, and, ultimately, increases the number of young people who have access to quality mentoring. This work must be continuous, and by committing to ongoing improvement, these mentoring professionals do their part in making sure that all young Canadians are able to reach their own potential in this fast-changing world. At the end of the day, what truly matters is that Jean and other young people have access to the support they need to understand who they are and who they really want to be.
Great, thank you, Michael. As a backbone organization, CMP plays a coordinating role in linking researchers, service providers, service recipients, funders, and volunteers. The projects that we are currently working on are focused on 4 pillars: research, technology, partnerships, and communication. I invite you all to check out the profiles and contact information for the CMP team on the mentoringcanada.ca website. I think you'll agree we have pulled together a highly skilled team that has also proven to be highly flexible and adaptable to ongoing realities. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. I would now like to turn things over to our Director of Research and Evaluation, Véronique Church-Duplessis.
Thank you, Stacy. Welcome, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. So I will give you a little bit of an overview of CMP's current research agenda and the projects that we have started to undertake and the research we're conducting right now across the country. So Michael, if I can get you to go to the next slide, please. It's just easier if we get you to navigate fewer.
Happy to help.
Thank you. So we're currently conducting exploratory research to better understand the current state of youth mentoring in Canada. And we're doing that by working with the Social Research and Demonstration Corporation, that is a non-for-profit organization that specializes in research for other organizations like ours and nonprofits. Why are we doing this research? Well, what we know is that the limited evidence base and research on youth mentoring in Canada is an important barrier to generating evidence-based policies and practices to improve access to and effectiveness of mentoring programs across the country. So the findings from our State of Mentoring Research Initiative will provide critical information for us to support improvement and innovation for mentoring programs and service delivery, will guide CMP's efforts as we set out to build partnerships and networks across the country, will help us advocate for increased investment in mentoring, will help us support existing programs and services, and it will help us develop a long-term strategy to enhance youth mentoring in Canada. Now, how are we doing this? We're doing this through a research project that explores both young people's experiences of mentoring, as well as by trying to capture what the mentoring program landscape looks like across the country. Now, the first part of our research project focuses on youth experiences. We're calling it Mapping the Gap. And that arm of the project is focused on gathering information about young Canadians' experiences through national youth surveys, including a panel survey conducted with 3,100 young people aged between the ages of 18 to 30. We conducted that survey in January and February, and we're starting the analysis of the results. We're also supplementing that survey with what we're calling a non-representative sample. So we'll be doing some outreach to specific communities across the country in the weeks to come, so that we get a better sense of how diverse communities across the country are accessing or not accessing mentoring informally or formally in their communities. The goals are really to determine the proportion of young people across the country who have access to formal or informal mentoring, and consider how demographic characteristics might modulate or impact their ability to access mentors. Michael, if you can switch to the next slide, right? Another question that we're asking here is whether young people's access to mentors had an influence on outcomes, including mental health and employment. So as we dig into the data and start analyzing the results we're getting from our surveys and later from our focus groups, we're trying to understand the connections that may exist in Canada between mentoring and youth outcomes. If you can go to the previous slide, Michael, I'm sorry for making you go back and forth. And there is a space for you here to help us increase our reach, particularly when it comes to this supplementary survey sample, which we will be deploying in the next few weeks. So we will be sharing invitations for youth to participate in the survey, and we will be connecting organizations that work with young people to invite them to share the link to their survey in their networks. That way we can maximize our chances of getting a representative sample across the country and get an accurate picture of what mentoring looks like across Canada. Michael, if you can go to 2 slides forward. I don't want to make anyone dizzy with all those switches. Here we go. So as I said, we concluded the panel survey a few weeks ago, and we're starting to dig into the data, and it's really, really interesting. One of the first questions that we wanted answered once we got those responses was whether or not youth in Canada had access to a mentor when they were teenagers. And we found out that about 41% of our survey respondents mentioned that they had access to a mentor when they were growing up. Of those, about 30% had a mentor through a formal mentoring program. In the future, the future questions we will explore will focus more or less on who is more or less likely to have access to mentoring in the country, and how CMP and mentoring service providers can work together to address the barriers that might prevent certain groups from accessing mentors when they need them. We will also explore questions about unmet needs and trying to understand what the mentoring gap does look like in Canada. Can you move to the next slide, please? Now that's the first stream. The second stream of the project focuses on mentoring programs and services. And we are trying to get a good sense of the landscape through a national survey of mentoring service providers. The survey will ask questions about who offers mentoring programs and services, who they are serving, how the programs are structured, what are the strengths and what are some of the challenges that mentoring service providers are facing in the country at this time. And this will help us, it will help CMP, but it will also help service providers across the country to understand what are the pressing gaps and challenges that we are facing. It will help CMP establish national trends on the scope and prevalence of mentoring supports for young people. So we'll set a baseline and we'll be able to track changes over time. It will also help us develop new resources, training, and tools that will support effectively mentoring service providers. And it will help us foster and unify a network of people and organizations that support youth mentoring in the country. And ultimately, it will help us advocate for more public and private investment in youth mentoring. So there's another opportunity for you to help us here. We will be circulating the invitation to participate in the survey in April. And I really encourage everyone to take a few minutes to help us understand what's going on the ground so that we can then identify priorities that are well aligned with the needs of the service provider organizations that we want to work with. So the goal behind the State of Mentoring research project is to build the knowledge and evidence base across the country, not just for CMP, but also for any mentoring service provider. And we want to do so in a way that will benefit the whole mentoring field. We will be sharing our research findings publicly, and we want to make sure that the resources and the reports we produce will be relevant for you. So with that in mind, Michael, can you pull my poll question, please?
So everybody should be able to see a poll right now. How would you be most likely to use the findings from the State of Mentoring Research Project?
I'm not seeing it. Am I the only one who's not seeing it? We had the issue too with Stacy's second poll when you were displaying the answers. They were not there. No, people are not seeing it
either.
Well, maybe we can ask you to use the chat box then. So thinking about how we will produce reports and infographics and dashboards and all sorts of tools and resources following the findings that we make through the State of Mentoring Research Initiative. How are you likely to use those findings? Are you going to use them for, what is it, Michael? Can you read the options?
Yeah, funding applications, advocacy, marketing and advertisement, program improvement.
And there are other options, obviously. So if you can just use the chat box and let us know, that's super helpful. We'll also be consulting with you on an ongoing basis going forward. So if we don't capture all of these, all of your responses and the diversity of needs and uses today, we will do that. Oh, there it is. I see it now.
Is the poll live?
It is.
Yeah. So it's awesome. Right now we have 145 people participating in this webinar. We've had over 150 as well too. So we have really high engagement right now, but I think that may be resulting in a lag for some of you. So I do see people filling in the question and answer. We'll get to those at the end. And as well, please keep giving your feedback in the chat box as well. We're watching it and trying to adapt on the fly. So.
Michael, can I change the script just for a second? Because there were some couple of good questions that came up that I'd love to Veronique to answer for us before we move on to Adrian.
Yes,
sure.
I saw them go through. I just didn't read them because I was focused. So if you can ask them.
I can ask them for you, Vero. So yes. The question about the wheel, we showed the wheel slide and it was this identifies positive impact of mentoring relationship for youth. That is correct. That was this slide, and these slides will be available after the fact. We'll be sharing with you. There was a question as well, Veronique, about the definition of mentoring in the survey. Do you want to speak to that quickly?
Yes, so we did use a pretty broad definition of mentoring, looking at a caring, supportive, usually older person, because we did want to include peer mentoring and not just adult mentoring, right? So we know that there are a lot of cross-age peer mentoring programs across the country that are doing an excellent job. So we're looking at an older, caring, supportive person who outside of your family, who was there to guide you, offer guidance, support, and I'm not recalling the last piece exactly, but these are the definitions that we've often seen in other similar surveys, and I think it is an adaptation of the definition that was used in the AMP Youth Population Survey in 2016. So we're building on other studies that have been done across the country on a smaller scale, and we're really expanding those studies and so that definition is where it's coming from. And we understand that there's a positive bias, obviously, when we're thinking about a mentor. Usually when we think about a mentor, it's a person who had a positive influence on our life. And that's just, I think, inherent to the role. So we're working through that. Were there other questions?
Yeah, another question was about just the critical perspective of mentorship in light of different cultural backgrounds. Could you speak to the inclusiveness of the survey and how you've tried to reach other communities as well too?
So a couple of things, right? So when we assembled our research advisory committee for this research project, we made sure to include diverse perspectives, youth voices, academic voices, service providers' voices, as well as people who work with different communities across our country. So we have the expertise of those individuals who know very well what their communities need and how they understand the definitions of mentoring. We're also trying to make sure that when we do our analysis, we're paying attention to factors, issues of privilege and oppression and how it impacts people's access to mentoring. And lastly, through the non-representative supplementary survey sample, as well as through the focus groups, we will be digging a lot deeper into how mentoring might look differently in certain communities across the country, how definitions themselves might be different, and we're making sure to, before we produce our reports and our analysis, to try to capture a very good sense of what those cultural specificities might be.
Awesome. So are you able to see the results of the poll?
Yes, that's excellent. It's good spread. I think that it shows that this type of research is very useful for a lot of things for mentoring programs. So I'm very excited to see that you also see value in this type of work. And I think we can go to slide number 4. And if there are questions we didn't address today, there will be, there we go. This is my last slide. It's an invitation to join us for our subsequent conversation specifically about the research pillar of CMP. We will be sharing a lot more preliminary results from the panel survey, and there will be an opportunity for you to engage with us as well there. And I see a last question about the Francophone population. Yes, all of this research is conducted in both official languages. For the focus groups, we might even add other languages as necessary to make sure that we communicate with different cultural groups. And yes, please join us on the 22nd. This is very exciting research. We've never done anything like that on this scale in Canada. So stay tuned, check out our website and join our webinar on the 22nd. And I'm pleased to now pass the baton over to Adrian Katz, who's our Senior Director of Information Systems.
It's a self-unmuting event. Okay, hi. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to electronically meet you. I think maybe let's try to dive in with a poll because they're fun. Michael, the first one on data, if you don't mind. No context.
Pulling it up now. Is the poll live?
Not that one, the other one. This, then, oh, okay, you put him in the same question. Yeah, sure.
So there's 2 questions there. I see people starting to vote. To maintain continuity of mentoring relationships, what type of e-mentoring system would assist you now? And in what ways might you be willing to participate in a national strategy to collect and reflect mentoring data?
And while you're filling it out, I'm putting my own answer to bias the poll by 1. All right. So in terms of technology for the CMP, there's one overarching goal, which is to develop I mean, obviously, the goal is to increase the accessibility of mentoring programs for youth. But one of the fundamental components of that, which isn't really addressed in the material that I'm about to present, is the need to create, using information systems in particular, a coherent voice for the mentoring movement in Canada. I saw one of the questions that was asked by, I see, Joel Murphy, questions about knowledge mobilization and developing buy-in from local organizations or at the local level. And I think those are critical components of even developing information systems and data strategies. And hopefully we'll address some of that momentarily. So, oh, sorry, we have poll results. Let's take a look. Chat-based, video, 82%. Yeah, okay. And data, periodically fill out short online forms. Interesting. So few people willing to let the CMP directly access your information systems. Fair enough, we don't really know each other yet. All right, so I'm gonna move on to directly into the meat and potatoes here. So aside from creating a generalized platform for disseminating information, which is another way of saying a well-built online presence in the modern time. One of the main things that we'd like to focus on is how to collect and reflect data about mentoring on an ongoing basis that is both national in scope and also locally relevant. And that necessarily means that this information would be derived from local sources, and that means service providers. So one of the key things that we have to figure out in collaboration with you, and that speaks to some of the material that Stacey was talking about in the manner in which we implement a collective impact model for the organization, is to work with stakeholders to figure out the best way for us to collect information and to identify what information we should be collecting to reflect the state of mentoring, where gaps are, and to use that information or to make it either for us to use it or to make it available to all of the community so that we can guide policy development, investment, and continue to drive research into the field and the subsequent analyses of that research and information. Next slide, please, Michael. One of the key elements as a value add that I think the CMP will be, will be very relevant to practitioners in particular, is the implementation of a national referral system. And that involves the accurate cataloging of all the programs and services that exist in the entire country. And that's not a very easy thing to do, because it first involves identifying or figuring out how to, for lack of a simpler term, parameterize these programs. And that means how to really identify the nature of every single mentoring program that's available to youth and where people can volunteer to become mentors. And once we have an accurate catalog, and we're actually pretty close to from a data perspective, being able to collect and aggregate all of the listings that already exist. And surprisingly, there are a number of catalogs that indirectly pull this information together. We're going to work with you guys, our partners, in figuring out the best way to build a system to recruit volunteers and then refer them to the programs that they're interested in participating in, your programs. And the same thing for youth. And that involves components not just about data management and figuring out how to communicate with service providers, but also a lot of considerations about how best to meet people where they are in order to bring the opportunities for mentorship to them. And that includes both prospective volunteers and mentees. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of knowledge mobilization, one of the things that is absolutely key is to convert a lot of the research that's going on into practicable and usable standards and information that can be applied on the ground. And I think one of the key elements to that is having a properly curated and universally accessible resource center, which includes not only tools for the development of programs and evaluation of programs, that also feeds into the first item that we were talking about, the national data strategy, so that we can identify where we're at and the quality of service delivery. But also that these tools and these resources be customizable so that they can be adapted to local realities. They should also be informed by the practices that are going on. And I think that speaks to some of the work that Vero's doing and a number of projects that are being contemplated now, but again, that require the input of the community in order to properly craft them so that the material and content of things like a resource or information center can be properly developed and distributed. Next slide, please. And then lastly, and it's not really lastly because there's so much more to say, but there are two aspects of increasing capacity that can be directly supported by the implementation or making available and accessible different types of tools to support service delivery. On the one hand, we know for a fact, based on a national survey of youth, that there's a desire amongst potential mentees to have more mentoring opportunities made available online. And this is the meet people where they are aspect of developing the service delivery paradigms in Canada. So there we're talking about creating or increasing the availability of virtual mentoring or e-mentoring opportunities. That is not a simple matter either, but given the current situation, we are fortunate to have already spent a great deal of time and energy scouring the environment for tools that can be brought to bear for the Canadian context. And in short order, we're hoping to work with some of our partners in delivering a system that might be able to allow ongoing in-person programs that might be, and sorry, this is a bit of a side note related to the current state of affairs. We may be able to bring a freely available tool to continue in-person programs in cyberspace, or at least for existing matches in the one-on-one context. So hopefully that'll be coming out in the next roughly month or so. That's an acceleration of a general plan and a mandate that we have to assist in the development of online mentoring capacity. And one of the great benefits of that, and I noticed in the comments as we were discussing, there are people in attendance right now that have the ability to attend and participate in this discussion because of the use of virtual or online technologies. So one of the major benefits of this that we're hoping, especially in Canada, where we have a very widely spread population, is to lower the geographical barrier to participation and also to be able to connect remote communities with people in different realities than theirs and vice versa. And that is a key benefit that we're hoping to achieve through the development of e-mentoring opportunities. Finally, on the point of systems that support capacity growth, efficiencies, it's kind of a bit of I guess a dirty word, if you will. Nobody wants to talk about, efficiency. It's very corporate, but if we can find, it's just shorthand for the idea that if we can find ways to ease the pain points in administering and processing the volume of information that's required in order to maintain programs on the ground, then it might free up a lot of the human resources and capital that already exists to be able to work on some of the things that get pushed to the side of the desk that are perhaps more substantive. And so we're looking at a variety of different tools that might be able to help with the delivery of service on the ground. Again, none of this will be brought to people like, hey, we've picked it and here it is. We would like to do a bit of an environmental scan, present the options that are out there, and then open up a conversation about whether or not it's reasonable to apply national resources to making these tools more available and accessible to practitioners. And that's really the approach that we're hoping to take generally with information systems and technology. And yeah, I hope that you will all, next slide please, particularly those that are involved in service delivery right now, come and attend the virtual mentoring conversation on April 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. That's GMT -4, daylight savings, no longer -5. And there we will have some people who are actually in attendance now, people who have run online programs, virtual mentoring programs, and are the deliverers of virtual mentoring services to discuss the methods that they use to deliver virtual mentoring and the platforms and tools, as well as a few academics who specialize in online and virtual mentoring solutions and can talk a little bit about both the concerns that exist in that field, particularly surrounding security and privacy. We're cognizant of those, and we're generally aware that rushing into a platform can be a bit scary because of those security and privacy concerns, but there's a lot of thought that has gone into this, and we'd like to share some of that with the community. And also to discuss the landscape of platforms that are out there, and perhaps to work together on some of the plans for how we can assist with the delivery of communication tools to support existing and ongoing programs. So please join us on April 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern time for our virtual mentoring webinar. And now I'd like to turn things over to Tracy Luca-Huger, who is our, drumroll please, Partnership and Network Development Director, or Director of the former. Thank you very much, folks.
Thanks, Adrian. Michael, I'm going to ask you to drive my slides as well. That would be really great. And we can. Thank you. Nice to meet everybody and virtually meet everyone. We're thrilled to share our work at the Canadian Mentoring Partnership, and more than that, to engage a dialogue about how we can all do this work together. Michael, can you switch to the next slide, please? Thank you. Core to our work at the Canadian Mentoring Partnership and core to us achieving our vision is through collaboration and through partnership and building networks. This is essential if we want to grow and mobilize a mentoring movement in Canada. Our work needs to be informed by service providers, using that expertise, engaging that expertise, raising the voice of that expertise, and engage practitioners from the front lines to have local and national relevance. Next slide, please. As a collective impact initiative, it's absolutely essential for CMP to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to engage, from stakeholders to service providers to frontline workers. This is essential. We're seeking input and engagement from our entire sector to contribute to the design and the leadership team, to design communities of practice, to look at partnership engagement, and to collectively really work alongside with each other. to impact and build new solutions around mentoring for young people in this country. And so our collective coming together is essential. That voice of the experts on the ground in communities is critical for building a mentoring movement in Canada that increases the bar of quality and absolutely increases accessibility for young people. Next slide, please. As Stacey referenced, CMP is considering itself a backbone support. We are not in the business of delivering service and delivering mentoring programs. We really are here to support service providers and networks and coalitions to come together. And so CMP, we want to leverage the lessons learned from existing networks and coalitions like the Alberta Mentoring Partnership and OMC. And we know that there are grassroots networks and coalitions that operate in certain regions. We want to learn from those successes. We want to leverage those learnings, and we want to convene service providers and stakeholders to further advance those networks and coalitions. We want to coordinate together around communities of practice in the mentoring field, to look at trainings, offer professional development that has high relevance for service providers on the ground. We want to collaborate. It's essential for us to look at the key findings from research and be research informed as we collectively build tools, resources, and effective practices for the mentoring field. Next slide, please, Michael. As Stacey referenced, part of our work is absolutely to build communities of practice. But in our current environment, we really want to, at this point in time of physical distancing and social and digital nearing, this has changed the scope of our work in the interim. And so we really want to build some working groups. We want to hear from service providers regarding your current needs. And this can be done through virtual meetings, through focus groups, and through brainstorming. So we really want to leverage what exists currently in real time, what is working now, how we can support service providers on the ground around continuing to deliver mentoring relationships and support mentoring relationships that exist. We want to support the advancement of mentoring services to engage with young people and with mentors, and to continue to convene service providers to talk about what does this mean in our interim during our pandemic, but also to build communities of practice for our future work and to advance mentoring in our country. Next slide, Michael. So why is this important? Why is a Canadian Mentoring Partnership important? Why is our collective work important? We are committed to expanding access to mentoring for young people. We want to build sector capacity. We want to do this through engaging and creating a common understanding around mentoring, building out networks, looking at both from a national perspective, but also a regional. We want to ensure that the networks we build and the conversations we're having have national, but also local and regional relevance. Our evidence-based practitioner work, that's important. We want to set the bar for quality mentoring in Canada. We are working very closely with Mentor in the US. We want to build an effective elements of practice through a Canadian lens, looking at the research that's being conducted across our country. We want to build evidence-based tools and resources, again, communities of practice. This is going to help drive our work and then shape our work, test our work on the local level, and make sure it's relevant for you as a service provider. Strengthening the mentoring field in Canada, we know that knowledge transfer and mobilization is critical, especially in this digital age that we're living in. We want to ensure that practitioners and service providers are well informed, that you're helping to drive the agenda with us, that we're providing essential professional development for service providers and for service delivery individuals on the ground. As a backbone organization, again, we want to support you as service providers. We want to build tools and resources to make your work easier and for us to come together to share. We want to build cross-sector support through campaigns and awareness, and again, raising the profile of the importance and the essential service that mentoring is for young people in our country. Next slide, please. So part of that work is we are working very closely with the Tamarack Institute, and so we want to invite you to be part of the discussion in designing the Canadian Mentoring Partnership. The goal of this session is going to be to look at gaining insight into the movement, into the design of a leadership team, to look at communities of practice, to explore population level outcome goals, who is already around the table that we have been having conversations with, all of you that have engaged today. And then who else do we need to include? Who's missing from this essential discussion and through our partnership collective? And to further explore and engage around governance and building out regional networks. We have heard already from the ground that we know that resources are tight and scarce, and those will continue to be a critical piece of our work. Is how can we collaborate? How can we come together to share resources to further advance mentoring and to look at high quality programs that potentially can be duplicated and revised and have relevance on the local level in certain regions, and to look at populations. So we invite you to do that. We really hope that we can have a really strong dialogue across the country around what networks could be, how they can come together, and how we can design a collective impact strategy with you so that all of us will benefit, and certainly at the end of the day that young people will benefit and have more access to mentoring. Michael, next slide, please. One of the core areas that we want to engage right now is around the Power of Mentoring campaign. We have been hosting events in Edmonton and had planned to host an event tomorrow evening in Ottawa and again in Toronto. Unfortunately, these have needed to also be canceled and put on hold for a period of time. But the Power of Mentoring events across this country really are an opportunity to engage young people who are disconnected from education and employment, to build new relationships and make new connections for young people to have those social networks. So what we do know is that young people want those connections, that it is through those power of relationships and through both formal and informal connections that young people can enhance their future and build networks to continue to build their future. So what we have done through the Power of Mentoring events is engage private sector employees and young people ages 18 to 24 from service provider, 18 to 24 through service providers on the ground. What we are looking at is hosting these events in person. As I said, this plan has been changed, but what we really want is for these young people to make 3 new connections. We want them to build out their social networks, build on personal branding, and look to careers for the future. So these are looking at career building opportunities for young people. The event that we held in Edmonton over a month ago now was highly successful. The energy was great. We had 20 young people in the room and over 35 mentors in the room having incredible dialogue around future and personal branding. And so these events, when they happen in person, are all facilitated. We guide conversation between young people and adults in the room. We allow them to work on their personal branding, look at networking skills, have conversations about career potentials. And then we allow those young people to continue those conversations and to continue those connections with individuals if they want post those events. So those are one-time events, 3 hours in an evening, tremendous opportunity for young people to build their capacity and their networks. Next slide, Michael. Thank you. So through this campaign, and given our current environment, it is really critical for us to shift to a virtual experience. And so we are currently looking at immediate changes to the Power of Mentoring events and opportunities to becoming a virtual opportunity. And so we are currently forecasting and piloting 4 different strategies where young people will have the opportunity, again, through facilitated experiences through virtual platforms like Zoom, that we will offer them career mentoring panels with private sector employees to engage in dialogue, to look at career pathways, to have conversations with professionals from diverse industries. We will look at one-to-one career mentoring opportunities, similar to the Power of Mentoring in in-person events, but we will use digital platforms and breakout rooms through facilitated conversation as well. We will look at also theme connections for young people to explore specific themes around STEM, gender equality in the workplace, again, engaging young people from service provider organizations to have dialogue with career professionals, potentially looking at executive level leaders and engage in small group discussions in breakout chat rooms through the Zoom platform, and convening conversations so that those young people can look at skill development and opportunities to engage and expand their network. So these 4 new virtual strategies, we are currently engaging in conversations with the private sector partners that had been engaged to come out in Ottawa and in Toronto to look at the opportunities and the dates that potentially we can offer. What we want to do is first engage those private sector employees that are on board and that this experience was put on hold for them. And then we'll be reaching out to individual service providers in Ottawa and Toronto initially, and then to our broader partners that are in this conversation right now today. We think that this virtual opportunity is going to be a tremendous advantage to actually work in tandem with in-person Power of Mentoring events so that we can reach young people in rural and remote areas, that we can bridge those gaps for young people and for mentors through virtual dialogue and conversation, to have career conversations, to connect with career professionals at various levels through various industries. And so our goal is that we will host these over the coming months and into the next year, both virtually and in person when our environment shifts so that we're allowed to do that again. What I want to share right now is the video from our Power of Mentoring event that we held in Edmonton. Again, this was part of our collateral that we're hoping to build. We will continue to build out collateral as we have these events happen in person, but we will also start to record our virtual Power of Mentoring events and conversations and dialogues that we will have to share and to allow young people to actually experience some of these if they haven't had the chance to attend in person or virtually.
A Power of Mentoring event is an opportunity to bring professionals from the community together with youth who are ages 18 to 24, interested in trying to expand their network, expand their skills, and access new opportunities in line with their academic and professional goals.
We have engaged private sector partners, businesses, corporations that are in local communities, as well as young people from youth-serving organizations.
There's a city councilor here sharing his story. There are entrepreneurs, members from RBC Royal Bank, members from Starbucks. The energy is very electric.
Think about this for a second. When you were young, how connected were you to diverse career pathways, to diverse skill sets, right? So when you come out to a Power of Mentoring event, you're getting exposed to all sorts of career pathways that you probably never even imagined before.
I learned we have a certain key, like a key to open many doors. If we have the key for mentorship, we can open many doors that can help us and benefit us. But not just us, but other people around us.
Well, selfishly, I'm a business owner, so I'm always looking for talent, and it isn't always what's on paper. It's if I'm willing to invest the time in a person, it allows me to broaden the type of candidate that we can attract into our culture and organization.
Every corporate partner benefits from just establishing these connections within their communities.
And showing them that they're not scary people. You know, you walk into RBC or Starbucks and they're busy, they're these big professionals, but today they're just here talking and just building that sense of community.
I love leaders with humility and a willingness to listen and learn and admit they don't know everything. That's a tremendous message to send to young people.
I learned that people are a lot more caring and people look out for others a lot more than what I originally thought. So it's not just you against the world. There's others out there looking out for you, wanting to give you the opportunities that you need and give you the help that you need to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve in your life.
The thing I love about Power of Mentoring events is it doesn't just stop at the event. There's an opportunity after the event for you as a participant, whether you're a young person or a mentor, to go back and tell your network all about your experience, to mobilize them to step up and engage in similar style events, or to sign up to be a mentor with a local mentoring program.
Thanks, Michael. That video really does capture the feel in the room that evening. We had a wonderful opportunity to have young people stay after and mentors stay after. And that was a real telling point, was after 2 hours of sitting in a room together, the energy continued and those conversations and dialogues continued. We had tremendous follow-up of mentors and young people wanting to continue their conversations, wanting to continue to support each other. And so we're looking forward to moving this to a virtual platform so that we can continue to expand those connections for young people across our country. I think that that's a real wonderful opportunity that we can provide during some of these difficult times. Michael, I'm wondering if we can just go to the 2 poll questions that I have. Again, during this time around social and digital nearing, we are really wanting to get a sense from you as service providers and practitioners on the ground as to the value add that CMP can provide to you around services and resources and tools that we can offer in the immediate future.
So I'm trying to launch the poll right now. It appears there's a bit of a delay on it.
Okay. It looks like it's up.
Oh, are people voting? Yep, attendees are viewing questions. There we go. It just took a minute to get going.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. What virtual and online tools and resources could CMP provide to best support your organization in delivering mentoring services during this time of personal distancing and virtual connectedness?
Oh, it's not letting people submit for some reason.
Oh, and when designing a national collaborative to lead the mentoring movement in Canada, what is most important to your organization? And so I'm seeing some responses coming in. So some people are submitting.
If you can't submit and you want to just put in your answer in the chat box, we would love to have that as well. Mm-hmm. Oh, you have to answer both questions. Okay, sorry, Michael. There's one below it as well. Yep. So there's question 2 before you can submit. Okay, thank you. And so the second one is around designing our national collaborative to lead a mentoring movement in Canada. We would also like to know what is most important to your organization. Participating in contributing to the overall structure, participating in communities of practice, becoming a member, accessing research, trainings, tools, and resources, having an active voice in the vision and leadership of CMP, and to participate in developing a mentoring network collaborative in my region. Or other.
Yeah, so lots of great feedback there. I'll try and share the results. There was a question earlier about the registration for the webinars. That has just been sent out yesterday in our newsletter. So if you go to mentoringcanada.ca, you can click on events and there's a registration for each of the webinars that the presenters have cited. For the Power Mentoring, you can go to powermentoring.ca and there'll be more information there about future Power Mentoring events as we proceed and as we come up with the next generation.
Great results. Thank you so much for contributing to these. Professional development and training through webinars, absolutely. We know that this is a priority for us, and certainly given our current environment, that will be absolutely essential. Looking at mentoring match activities, very important as well, and we're going to look at this. We're looking at what we can leverage and work with Alberta Mentoring Partnership on what's been established already. So we will continue to reach out and to work with each other and with you as service providers to pay close attention to the near future as to these needs and how we can best meet them. Again, accessing mentoring research trainings and tools, fabulous. That doesn't surprise me. We know that we need to build this with a Canadian lens, and we're so thrilled and excited to look at the research that we're developing in Canada and to translate that into practical tools and resources with a Canadian lens. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to hand it over now back to you, Michael, as Director of Communications.
Awesome. So really, this is nearing the end of the presentation for those tuning in, and we will get to the question and answers that you've been posting. There's been so much great feedback through this format. So my name is Michael Jans. I'm Director of Communications with Mentoring Canada, and really, I have the great fortune of being the support to the rest of these fantastic leaders and helping to do the storytelling and celebrating the great potential we have together regarding collective impact. Prior to joining the CMP, I'm barely 2 weeks in the job here. I was at the Alberta Mentoring Partnership for over 4 years. So I have firsthand experience of seeing the power of collective impact in action, and how, because of the work of the collective of people like you who are on this call, sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your expertise, I saw better programs, more innovative program ideas, program improvements, better service delivery to young people, better fund development, better mentor recruitment, all of it when everybody came together and said, I'm going to take these ideas that are working well for my program and to share them elsewhere with everyone else. So the two words when I think about the mentoring movement in Canada that I've seen firsthand, the two words that come to mind are generosity and passion. I know that many of you are so passionate about your program, about the work, about the leadership and the impact that you've seen mentoring play in your community, that you want to share that. You're looking for ways to take your resources and scale them across Canada, and we're here to help you, and that's going to be part of our role. So we're going to be helping out in a lot of other ways that are they're just easier and sometimes more impactful when they can be done on a national level. For example, the research that Veronique talked about, talking about scaling up a mentor recruitment platform. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had one website that we could share and people could identify their local community or the type of program that they're interested in mentoring in, and we could help make that happen across Canada. We know, I wrote this down when Beth was talking, but this number, the 4.1 million young people across Canada, that's enormous. There's more than enough young people across the country who need our help. There's more than enough room for all of us. And truly, through better research, better case for investment, better demonstration of return on investment and evaluation through mentoring, we'll be able to be that rising tide to lift all of the ships across Canada. So that's going to look differently depending on where you are in Canada. We're not here to say this is a one-size-fits-all solution. We're here to say we want to work with you where you are and adapt and learn and scale up and scale out these different practices and the different assets that we have for you. So we've seen this work already. We did a Mentoring Month campaign in January of 2020 to help promote awareness about the impact of youth mentoring across Canada. So We're looking forward to scaling up campaigns like that. If there's a meta problem that we all have that we're all looking into, say, hypothetically, how do we tap into more corporations providing mentors for young people? That's something that CMP can help do a national strategy on Bay Street with some of the major corporations, like say a Cal Tire, that doesn't want to set up a deal just for one mentoring program in one community, but wants to look at a national strategy on how their corporation could give back. We've seen that with Starbucks, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, all of these already that Tracy has been building partnerships with through the Power of Mentoring work. So it's going to be incredible what we are able to do together with your generosity, your passion, your time, your talent, and my cat is so excited about it as well too, as you can hear. So looking forward, whether we can help in recruitment of mentors, growth of mentoring programs, scaling up the quality, and helping share best practices. We know that there's some of you on this call, to be honest, you're going to be net givers. You're going to be somebody who really, you have a strong umbrella organization, strong national supports, strong funding. You're probably going to be doing very well. But there's a lot of other programs in Canada who are not, who really need the support, who have a lot to learn and a lot that they want to learn, and that your ability here will be as a net giver to be able to help them expand and enhance the quality of their mentoring programs. So we know that there's some other areas where all of us are struggling together. How do we better serve rural Canadians? What ability do we have to connect to people in remote locations? How do we take areas where we have a large number of, say, seniors or retired people who are interested in mentoring and giving back? How can we engage them digitally to people in the remote north to help talk to young people? There's so much potential here that with the national lens and a national strategy, we not only can do, but we will do, because we've already seen this demonstrated through the Ontario Mentoring Coalition, the Alberta Mentoring Partnership, and through the tremendous leadership that Mentor in the United States has demonstrated here. So in some ways, I feel like I have the best portfolio out of everybody here on the call, because I just get to help be the storyteller to the fantastic work that they're doing. So we want to hear from you more about how we can help. We're going to be bolstering this case for investment in mentoring. We're going to be showcasing through the research that Veronique talked about, not just in terms of the experiences of the youth and the experiences of the providers, but we're looking into serving people who are out there in terms of market research for who could be potential mentors. What do we need to engage them? What are they looking for? What messages work and don't work? And if any of you out there have been in the volunteer recruitment or fund development role, having that sort of data is incredibly helpful, and that's something that we can do for you. So large or small, we want to adapt to support you, and we want to make sure that you are just as engaged in this, in sharing your best practices, sharing the stories that you're most proud of. You know firsthand the mentoring impact. You've seen the impact that it's had on young people, on their families, on the mentors, and that's what we want to hear from you. We're going to be looking at capturing and expanding and sharing your stories across Canada. So we have so much more to share. This is just the beginning. We're excited. And in closing, one of my favorite movies I've seen in the last 30 years in my life has been the Won't You Be My Neighbor documentary about Mr. Rogers. And Fred Rogers talked about to children, when you're in a time of crisis, when you're in the Kennedy assassination, when you're in tough times, what do you do? And I think about that in terms of COVID right now, that with the anxiety and a lot of young people out there thinking about what to do. And Mr. Rogers' advice was, look for the helpers, look for the people who are helping. And if you've given your time today to be on this call with us, you are one of the helpers. And we're so excited about being with you going forward. So over to you, Stacey.
Oh, I didn't know you were flipping it back to me, but that's okay. I can be quick on my feet. I think the big piece we want to highlight are the upcoming webinars that everybody's been talking about today. We do have these listed on our website. They are on our social media. There's been a lot of questions of, can we have mentors involved in these conversations? Can my frontline staff, does it have to be high-level directors? So the original vision for the symposium face-to-face was a thought leadership, and it was to brainstorm these ideas with the thought leaders or the leaders of organizations, and then trickle it down to whoever you felt needed to be around the table. So the answer is absolutely yes. If you want a mentor or even a mentee or whoever you think would benefit from the virtual mentoring. We want everybody's voice: youth, volunteer, frontline staff, directors, as well as external stakeholders, those who are investing in mentoring. And again, investing in mentoring are volunteers giving their hours, and then those that are giving their dollars. So everybody's invited to these, and over time we'll see where the best fits are, but for now I think it's best if everybody engages. Follow us on social media, so Mentoring Canada on Twitter and on LinkedIn. On Instagram, it happens to be Mentor Canada, only because Mentoring Canada, I think, was taken by someone else. Mentoring Canada, you can post your own stories using Mentoring Canada, Power of Mentoring as a hashtag, become ambassadors. So we are developing an ambassador program. So if there's someone in your community who would love to help us raise the profile by speaking about mentoring, someone who has a little bit of influence, someone who others follow, then please, we're more than willing to engage with them. We, as I said earlier, don't want to pull away from local communities. We just want to help to elevate successful stories. So if you have someone who's helping you raise funds in your community and you don't want to share them, that's fine. But if you think they can help on a national level, that would be great. And we do ask you to circulate, promote the becomeamentor.ca website. There is a powerofmentoring.ca. Is it powerofmentoring.ca?
Right.
Yeah, .ca website as well. All of our videos are also on YouTube, so you can check out the YouTube channel. And I'll pass it back to you to talk about the survey, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you aren't on our newsletter list already, please visit Mentor Canada. Please visit our website, mentorcanada.ca, and we will. You can sign up and add your email to the list. And please do check your inbox or your junk mail. 2 important emails you would have got the last 2 days. One is the registration information for the webinars. The second is we're trying to do a rapid response right now in terms of shifting our priorities to make sure that we can support all of you in the COVID times. So we just had a couple of quick questions about how your program's adapting, what we can do to serve you better, and what assets do you have that you want to share across Canada. Some of you have already been dropping these into the chat box. That's tremendously helpful. We want to get it out there, and we want to pull together an aggregated source of trusted information on our page that we can circulate out to all of you. So watch for that in your inbox now. We're now at the Q&A portion of the webinar. So it's incredible. We still have well over 100 participants on the line. So if you have questions, if you've been holding out, please do type them in. We're going to go back and try and catch some of the questions we might have missed. Some of your questions I saw are very specific and detailed, and we would encourage you to bring them to the webinars with the respective director at that time. While I'm waiting for a couple of questions to pop up, Veronique, I had a question. How is the CMP working with the broader academic community across Canada? Can you speak to your post-secondary partnerships?
Yes, before I do that though, I would like to mention, as Adrian has thoughtfully mentioned in the chat box, all of our websites are available in French and English, right? For those of you who are participating today in French, you can find more information about our work on our websites immediately, and then we'll get you this presentation translated next week. Yes, so part of the work that I'm doing is working with the University of Alberta and the Alberta Mentoring Partnership to create the Canadian Centre for Mentoring Research. And the goal of the center is to bring the academic community and the community of practitioners together to advance the research and knowledge base surrounding mentoring in the country. All too often we base our decisions and our knowledge on what we've learned from our neighbors to the south or from the UK or Europe. But we know that some of those findings, some of those conclusions might apply to us in Canada, but we are also not capturing some of the specificities of our country. So we are working very closely with Christina Rinaldi at the University of Alberta and AMP to bring the center forward. We should be developing a web presence in the coming months and hoping to start convening researchers and increasing the interest and raising the profile for academic research into youth mentoring across the country.
And another question here. what topic is next on the CMP research agenda?
Well, you stole a bit of my thunder there, but it's all right. It shows how our work is really, although we have those 4 pillars, they talk to each other so closely all the time. The next thing that we would like to explore is do some market research into what Canadians think about mentoring, whether or not it's a good investment, and then also try to understand who is more likely to volunteer to be an informal mentor, who's more likely to volunteer to be a formal mentor, and how can we tailor recruitment strategies to get to those people in the middle who might be persuaded or convinced or even enticed to volunteer some of their time to become mentors, so that we will be developing some strategies for that programs and organizations can use to enhance their own recruitment strategies.
Awesome. There was a question about services to schools. I can't find it here right now, but it was about the number of young people accessing resources through their schools. I think it was more general, not in the time of COVID. Did Tracy, do you want to talk maybe about our school partnerships or how we're going to engage formal education opportunities?
Yeah, similar to how the Alberta Mentoring Partnership has education at the table, this will be critical for us to work with regions and local service providers to engage those academic and education systems as well, and those school boards. So we want them to be at the table. We want to have the dialogue with them around mentoring and the influence that it has in their buildings, the programs that they are running, and how we can work collectively with them to advance mentoring opportunities for young people, both in academic and education settings and in the community.
There was a question about age range of youth that we're concerned about. Is it sort of the 6 to 16? Is it 6 to 30? Stacy, do you want to speak to that? What's sort of the scope of work when we talk about mentoring?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a debate right now, just because our central funding is coming through Youth Employment and Skills Strategy, which is generally for youth that are about 18 or 16 and over. But the founding partners are organizations that offer services to youth as young as 7, 8 years old. So we are trying to figure that piece out. I would say nothing is off the table right now, but when we talk about youth mentoring, it's generally the 8 years old up till about 24, 25, maybe up until young adult 35, if it's related to career and employment. And at the same time, we are getting asked often, in Quebec, they have Mentorat Quebec that looks at mentoring from all angles. It's just generic mentoring. It's employment mentoring, it's entrepreneurship, it's small business, and it's youth. So maybe over the long term, that might be something that we end up looking like. But for now, we're starting with youth mentoring, loosely defined youth mentoring, but we will figure that out with our new leadership team once we start to form it in the coming months.
So I see another question. To what extent will the CMP focus on and centralize the critical mentoring theory and practice from Tori Wieston-Sheridan?
I don't know if that's a me question. That's I'm gonna throw it over to Veronique, because I think I like her to answer. She's very good with these things, or even Tracy.
I can speak to it from the research perspective, right? Whenever we analyze the data, it's really important for us to understand how various factors of privilege or repression influence people's experiences with mentoring. And also understand how gaps in services might be closely connected to those experiences as well. And also, when we're thinking about how we're defining a mentor, we know that different cultural communities have different definitions, and we need to be responsive to that and take that into account. And we will be exploring those questions a lot more through our focus groups. The one thing that we can do is make sure that we integrate that perspective into all of the resources that we're developing. But at the end of the day, we're dependent upon service providers to adopt those practices into their service delivery as well, right? We can develop the tools and encourage adoption, and we can encourage people to understand how this critical mentoring theory is probably critical in the years to come in terms of developing relevant and responsible mentoring services for young Canadians across the country, but we can't do it all on our own. So we're hoping that you will engage with us to make sure that we can do that and that there will be uptake.
Awesome. So yeah, seeing a lot of support and love for the critical mentoring theory and being taking an EDI lens to our work going forward. Certainly a recognition from the field how important that is. Seeing that in the chat.
I didn't really talk about how it will be integrated in our leadership tables and communities of practice. I think that's more of a Tracy point.
The communities of practice are going to be critical around having those conversations. What is relevant on the ground? What is happening on the ground? How can we innovate together? How can we increase opportunities to look at innovative programs to be expanded into different regions, and also then have them become applicable, right? How do you test them? How do you make them applicable? How do you tweak them? So those conversations and that work collectively through communities of practice is going to be core to our work moving forward.
Yeah, I just want to underline too that there's a lot of questions about EDI and diversity and representation, and we acknowledge that you know, we absolutely need to find a way to invite people to the table to engage with us and not just throw out open invitations, assuming everybody will get our blanket invitation. So we're working as a team on that. We're working with AMP, OMC, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada on that. We are reaching out to organizations like Students Commission Canada. We're trying our best to really tap on some doors and ask for some concerted or dedicated time for people to support us as we build out the leadership table. So the idea when we come together in May, then we'll have a facilitated conversation May 6th with Tamarack Institute around developing a national collaborative. We assume we're going to start rather large to begin with and then move towards what governance and a leadership table of, you know, 10, 12 people would look like. But before we decide the governance, we want to understand a little bit more who's missing and where we need to go. So 100% we're open to the feedback of who's missing. A couple of people have asked how they can get involved. My email address is there, send it to me. And if it's not me who you need to work with, I'll connect you to the right member of the team. But call any of us and we will be happy to figure it out with you.
Awesome. So seeing no, oh, here we go. Yeah, seeing some great feedback in the chat about opportunities going forward, about school-based mentoring and working with different communities. This is fantastic. So, Stacy, from here, the events are on the website for you can register for the webinars. Go to mentoringcanada.ca, click on events in English or French. There's going to be more French language translation and resources coming. The 3 videos that you saw today in the presentation are available on YouTube now. Just search Canadian Mentoring Partnership. Please subscribe to our channel. We'll be sharing out the PowerPoint slides and looking for feedback from you in the coming weeks. Is there anything else anybody wanted to add before we disconnect, being mindful of the time limit?
I don't think so. I think we've got a lot of high fives in our chat. So I'm very, very proud of our team for being able to pivot from an in-person symposium to a two-hour webinar. So thank you to the team. Thank you to the founding partners, Liz, Matthew, and Beth, who are on the line with us today. Je pense vraiment qu'on a beaucoup à faire ensemble. Il y a beaucoup de travail devant nous. Et s'il vous plaît, comme Michael a mentionné, n'hésite pas d'aller voir sur le site web, aller voir sur YouTube et sur nos médias sociaux pour rester en contact. I just repeated what you said, Michael, in French for people to join us on YouTube and our websites. And I think that we're good.
Merci beaucoup. All right. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Hashtags work at home and all of the rest of it.
We're in it together, together. Yeah.
Indeed. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.